Wait,
Are those your official podcast classes?
yeah, I don't know. This is what I'm gonna do.
Great.
Welcome. I'm just gonna, because I want to start talking. Welcome to Creative Risk, an artist strategy podcast where we talk about art, entrepreneurialism, and everything in between. I'm Mike Labadia.
And I'm Joshua Morgan.
Yeah, there you go. Let me tell you about, I just have to briefly say, I had one of the worst days of my life yesterday. Can I just briefly talk about it? Very briefly.
Yeah.
So I bike to rehearsal, and I have I live in Astoria. I bike to the Upper West, or to rehearsal before the preview. I have a little pack on my I have a little pack on my bike. The keys fell out, so house keys gone somewhere in the street. That's the first thing I realized when I get to rehearsal. My landlord, who's like a communist swine, she's like from some fucking Eastern European country.
Swine.
No, she is. She's like a complete bitch, and she's just terrible. She's you know my relationship.
No,
with her.
she is bad.
She's bad.
Yeah.
She's the reason why I call her communist swine is because she doesn't I'm her customer and she treats me like I fucking hate her. But anyway, so but she's of course not in town. God knows where she is, probably in a sleeper cell in fucking Ukraine. I don't know, but anyway, so
not Ukraine.
Whatever. And so basically, that happened. Then rehearsal, just a few fucked up, which we'll talk about. That'll be very relevant to our episode today on ego. Just a couple of the actors said things that pissed me off, so I just it was a little too, we're all very close. And
like
sometimes
what?
I got some notes from other actors.
They gave you notes directly?
Well, not notes, but suggestions.
Give me an example, please.
Yeah,
I want
sure,
it because it relates to this episode. In fact, I'm typing it into our note thing because of that.
There's a moment in the play where I say something to a character, and the play is fucking weird, and my interpretation of this line. I'm very smart, and I've tried this line 45 different ways, and I've settled on this one way of saying it. And one of the other actors, who's my good friend, was basically to the director, he's like, hey, how about that? Are we going to do it like that? He basically said that. And it has nothing to do with him. I deliver the line to him. And it fucking drove me. And this dude he's my good friend and I love him. He's a good actor and I won't name him, but he gets a little controlling, a little micromanaging, and it's a rep company. So we're all very close and it's a very open dialogue and blah, 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 blah. So that drove me fucking crazy. Then we've had 2 great nights. Houses were great, laughing out loud, standing ovations. Last night it was a fucking crypt. It was a crypt last night. And it was a press night. And their whole time from the beginning, they're like this. And it was a crypt, sucking all the energy. And then I go to put on my backpack, leaving to go home, to bike home, my straps rip off. So I had to carry my back, so I couldn't bike home. So I had to carry my backpack in my arms.
No, wait, you don't have those. You have that cool bag with you had 2 pints of Ben and Jerry's. That's what you said, you bitch.
I went home and I just had a bunch of Ben and Jerry's. That's what I did.
That is hilarious. Mike has this bag with these cool handles on the top. Did you use those, or are those rip off?
No, they fucking ripped.
Oh, those are cool.
I so bad day yesterday. The worst day.
Well, I'm sorry you had a bad day, but some of that is relevant to this episode. I had a great show. They were actually. Well, actually, but I do want to say it's so funny because how, just to say this, when it's sometimes whenever you're doing a show, obviously, especially a comedy though, you'll walk out and you'll start and you can tell, are they going to make us work for this shit or are they going to be right there with us? And last night, I could have moved my pinky, in a quirky way and they would have laughed. And that's always makes the job easier. I find I sweat less, and then I say that because I sweat less because I have to wear this fucking bald cap, and when I have to work for it, it comes off. But you're talking about stuff that's gonna
be relevant for today's episode.
Because today we are talking about a secret weapon that either helps us or hurts us, our best friend and potentially our worst nightmare, which is ego. And I'm excited to get into it because I think you and I in particular, it's healthy for us to talk about this because I do think we have, egos, and we'll talk about what those are. I mean, everyone has an ego, but you know what I'm saying. A big ego.
I know what you're saying. A big one. Massive.
Massive egos.
Massive.
But before we get
big
to that,
ego.
Before we get to that, let's talk about our comfort food performances.
Okay. By the way, the strike is over as of last night.
Oh yes, of course. Oh my gosh, that's the big news.
What are 75% of actors going to do for their personalities now? That's what my question.
Don't be mean.
It's just like it's like, do you have anything else? Like any personality? Sorry.
God. I know what you're saying.
That's it. We lost the 10 listeners. Anyway.
I know what you're saying, but I also was reflecting on whether or not I could have been more active, more supportive, because it's not that we weren't. We did a whole episode on it too, but
yeah,
this
we had Bob Iger and David Zaslav on the show to give their viewpoint. Yeah,
that
we did our
amazing.
part.
Could you imagine if we were like, we're gonna have the execs on? Wait, but let's do comfort food performances. You want to start, or you want me to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
So as I was eating my 2 pints last night, putting in work.
Not 2. Why 2? Why not just 1?
1 is not enough. 1 is too many, and 1,000 are never enough.
That's like $17 worth of ice cream.
Yeah, I know. You're telling me. I gotta get a new backpack too now. Anyway,
to load them up in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How will this keep ice cream, sir? By the Patagonia, like cool pack or something. Anyway, but when I come home from the show, like, okay, like and I'm like fucking beat. It's like I watch Gomorrah on Max. That's that's like a definite comfort food. So Gomorrah is an Italian television show. It's the biggest show in Italy, and it's one of the biggest shows in Europe. Mm-hmm. It's on Sky, and it's about the Camorra. The Camorra is basically the Neapolitan mafia. Okay. And so it's a show about the Neapolitan mafia, basically. Okay. It's based off of this book that this guy wrote that was like it was a nonfiction book about it, and then a very big movie was made that was like went to Cannes and all this shit, and then they made a television show out of it. Okay. And it's fucking amazing. That's good supplement. That's a good supplement to your Sopranos. It's like
I'm looking at these men who are intensely looking in each other's eyes.
Yeah, it's very homoerotic. It's Italian, so it's a little homoerotic. Like, because so it's like they'll behead each other, but then there's like a lot of like holding each other's faces, being like like looking at each other. It's fucking.
My brother.
I mean,
wait, that was my Italian. My brother.
Are you sure? My brother. I don't think so. I think it's the opposite.
My brother Riano. How do you say brother in Italian?
my brother Edie.
My panini.
My little meatball.
Wait,
yeah,
but is there a performance or just the whole show?
No, the whole. Well, I guess I'll say Christiana Delana, who's on it, is like oh my god, bro. Let me tell you something. In the dark recesses of my room late at night, that's
with
what
the
I'm
pints of ice cream on either side of you.
Yeah,
dripping down your chin.
Sweat under my tits.
He's single, ladies. He's
exactly,
single.
Yeah. Can you wonder why? Anyway, but
no, but
God,
yeah.
But she's great in it, and I mean, she may be one of the most beautiful women like I've ever seen. She's just gorgeous, and she's great. She's phenomenal. On the show, but the show itself I strongly recommend. It's just like it's a crime show, and it's like fucking and it's gaudy because it's Naples, so they're like low class, like but they have all this money. It's good.
I would never have watched it if you hadn't said it, because from the looks of it, I will watch it. I will watch an episode.
Yeah. Ooh, chow roti. I don't know, whatever.
Well, my comfort food performance is a movie that you're gonna be obsessed with. Dix the musical is it takes a lot to shock me, and this is a wild movie. This isn't giving anything away, but literally the last minute of the movie is them singing a song that just kind of goes, "God is a faggot." That's just like, on repeat.
Yeah.
But Megan Mullally's performance in this movie is so good. She's so talented, but she plays this crazy, one of the crazy moms who's in a wheelchair and carries her vagina around in her purse, and it is such a bizarre performance. But she really lives in the weirdness of it, and not to knock Nathan Lane, because we know we love Nathan Lane, but Nathan Lane plays her ex-husband in it, and he's sort of like the other of that sort of clown duo in this movie, and it's just half of what she's giving, because she somehow has found the sweet spot of like, where can I find truth but also live in this zany world, and it's just great. It's so good. I love the movie. Everyone should see it. And Megan Mullally, what a gift she is to us. What a gift she is.
Yeah, that's so great of you to baptize her.
She really is great. It's great, and it's a great weird movie.
Great.
Okay,
props, as the kids say.
So should we jump into this? Should we jump in?
Yeah, let's do it, because I know you want to try and keep these episodes under an hour 40.
Well, I do. It's already 15 minutes. Again. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. No one hates us for chit-chatting.
We had to talk about the sweat under my tits. Anyway, so
okay. So obviously, just to say before we dive into the heart of this, we're talking about ego today, specifically, as it's the idea of it being our best friend and worst nightmare, because first of all, we all have egos, and we're not psychologists. We're not gonna break down the Freudian nature, whatever. We're just gonna talk about it as to how our understanding of how it relates. Gay thought, intellect. We're just going to talk about it in relation to how we all sort of understand it as our work as artists and actors, because it plays an important role, both positively and unfortunately often negatively. Period. So why don't we start by
I like
giving
this definition. That you must have. What did you find it on the interwebs?
Absolutely.
So a person's ego is a person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance. Self-esteem or self-importance. I think that's really good, and I think the next thing is, I kind of want to talk about what does ego mean to each of us personally. And I think that this definition is really good because, when we think of ego in a traditional sense, it's like if somebody's got a big ego, that means definitely the self-esteem. And when we think about self-importance, it's like, I'm basically the best, right? But there's a flip side to this that I just want to be, self-importance, there's this phrase in certain circles that is used, which is somebody thinks that they're a piece of shit that the world revolves around. And it's like, you're this piece of shit at the center of the universe. That's an example of an ego. Like, you can think, it's not just about value judgments of like, I'm the best. If you have an incredibly low sense of self-esteem and think that everything you do is horrifically bad and that you're the worst, that's ego as well, because you're putting yourself on a pedestal. You're giving too much importance to your existence and to what you do, and placing too much meaning behind it. And so I love the phrase, I'm a piece of shit at the center of the universe. That's like, an example of what ego can be, in addition to thinking that you're the best thing in the center of the universe,
Yeah. No, I could think of many people who would probably prescribe to that very idea. And we know some of them ourselves. And it's kind of sad, actually, when you think about it.
Well, yeah, because I definitely have that problem, yeah.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Break that open, Mike. Why do you feel like a piece of shit?
No, well,
no.
Well, no. It's not even feeling like a piece of shit. And we'll talk about this at the end when we talk about but it's funny. That's why I like my therapist, because my therapist is kind of like, he's always just kind of like, even I'm like, I did this, and I feel he's like, who cares? That's basically kind of his. It's not that blunt, but it's kind of like that's kind of his framework. Is like you're placing too much importance on your flaws or what you did or blah 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 blah. It's just like you're just another bozo on the bus, and it's when we get so caught. And yeah, so I have a mix of, as many people do, of like thinking I'm the best and thinking I'm the worst, and when I think I'm the worst, that is, yes, it means that everything I do is like, oh, I'm god awful. They're going to, let me give you an example, actually. I remember, the first 5 years I was auditioning in the city, I would feel like I bought like horrific. I'd be like, oh my God, I blew that audition. Or like horrific, like I did so bad. Me, I had a really hard relationship with auditioning for many years. And I'd be like, oh my God, like I did so bad, god awful, blah, 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 blah. And I was sitting down with the pretty, big casting director who called me in a bunch, years after, and we were talking, and I was like, well, I just felt like, I never felt like I was a good auditioner until recently. He goes, oh, I never thought you were bad. He just said, like, I thought you were good. And it was so funny because I was spinning this story like, oh my God, I'm going in there and they're thinking I'm so bad that they're like talking shit about me afterwards. And they're like, he's so awful. And it's like, that's ego. Like thinking, that I'm so important that like people are obsessing about how bad I am.
Exactly.
Is another version of ego,
Well, ego to me ultimately is, I mean, I like this definition, a person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance, but I guess I would sort of, the way I would sort of word it is self-worth, my feelings of self-worth and the actions or inaction I take, and my perceptions of fair or unfair treatment. Really, that's essentially what ego means to me. And I'll give you an example of when I think it's helped me in general and when I think it hurts me. Top level, it helps me, and we always hear my boring Les Mis story. We send my emails to get in the room. But the reason why that's an example, and where it, including yesterday, it continues to help me, is I'm not going to, wait for someone, my agents, anybody, to sort of continue to vie for me in this industry to create opportunity. I didn't have agents when I sort of booked that show, but I had a healthy enough sense of self-worth to know I can do this, and I'm going to get in that damn room. And that's where it really helped me. Let me give you an example where it hurt me, in my opinion. Or, it's a gray area, and you can
when I made everybody cry every show I did.
When I beat my dresser. No.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
It's true.
No, shut up. Don't start spitting that shit. No, I'll tell you what. There's a casting office that was casting a revival of something a couple years ago. And I really wanted to be seen for it. And to this day, I still think I should have been seen for it. Spoiler alert, I wasn't seen. But let me tell you what happened. I saw that they were casting. I made my case to my agents and my manager. Everyone agreed I should get in. They started pushing me. No word. I kept following up. I really wanted to be seen for the show. No word. I wasn't going to give up on it. So I emailed myself. No word. Then my agent at the time, they were old agents, says to me, we keep trying to say, they said they have, we keep trying to get you in. They say that there's a limited amount of time they have in the room, and they don't know your work well enough, and so they're not comfortable bringing you in at this time. I didn't let up. I said, please, I should be seen for the show. So finally the casting director says, okay, we'll let Joshua tape for it. I was pissed. I said, you tell them, I will not be pre-screened. They can give me the 6 minutes in the room to show them what I have to offer. Look at my resume. I've done 2 Broadway shows at this point. I'm not bullshit. Give me the time in the room to show you what I got. I also think that's the casting director's job. And I was pissed. And so I said, I'm not taping for it. I had a 5-show weekend. I was doing Ain't Too Proud at the time. I said, I'm not doing it. And I'll never forget, I went in for a meeting with my agents, and my agent, one of my agents was like, I think that was a mistake. Because this was an opportunity for you to begin to get to know this person too. Because in his defense, this casting person had never seen me, or hadn't seen me live. And it was an opportunity. And my ego, I think they're right. I think it got in the way, because what if I had been like, you know what? Okay, I will tape. And I'm going to give a great tape.
Best tape.
Exactly.
Best tape ever.
And that's where I think my ego might have hurt me. That's an example.
No, and we'll talk about this, but I think most actors hear that story, if I may. And when I hear that story, I don't know. I'll speak for myself. That's the reason why, and we'll kind of get into this in terms when we talk about why ego is good. The reason why that's impressive to me is because most people in this business are so fucking, have no spine to stand up for themselves and are willing to do whatever the fuck they need to do, to get a job, that, when somebody stands up for themselves, it's impressive. But yes, I do hear you, as opposed to flipping the script and being like, using your ego to be like, yeah, I'm going to give a great tape. Yeah, that makes sense. This
same casting person works on several projects that I'm also still right for, and I never get in for them. And I wonder if that backfired. And I just reflect on it because I don't think it might have been the healthiest for us. And I will say, part of what makes this difficult, part of what makes this idea of ego in relation to our work challenging is that it's hard to separate us from the work, from the parts, because we are it. As much as we talk about it, even in our marketing work, trying to separate those two things, and we talk about objectifying ourselves and treating us like we would if we were selling shoelaces, it still is different, because you were upset yesterday about it's a collaboration. You're all on the stage together. And the actor wanted to know. I'm not saying that was right, by the way. I don't think actors should give other actors notes. But why? Why do we care? Why does that? Because we
exactly.
are
Why
the
should
product.
It make a difference? Right. Exactly.
As opposed to should we put the chair over here? Is he going to say the line like that?
Right. Exactly.
But that's what makes it hard.
Nothing to add to that. I think you're right. I think that we should talk about some examples of seemingly healthy egos, people with healthy egos.
Okay.
And I'll go first. I really, this person, Liz Lale is somebody I always think about when I think about somebody with a healthy ego. Liz is, she's an actor. She just did 5 Nights at Freddy's, and has been on You and stuff, and she's great. And the reason why Liz is, I really think Liz is great. Liz has always been a very humble person. In school, very humble person. And when you talk to her, very down to earth, very chill. And this is somebody who who's had pretty great career and so far and has a massive following, a humongous following, a humongous platform. And yet she's always somehow, staying grounded. She doesn't seem like somebody, every time I see, she's not caught up in it all, caught up in all the, hype and shit. She just keeps it real. She keeps it grounded. She still really cares about the work primarily. She really cares about that. She'll also be down to do shit. Still. Which is great. She's down to play. And do things. So, I that's an example of somebody who I think has a right-sized ego.
I don't know her that well. You obviously know her better than I do, but always lovely. And she's excuse me. I know for a fact she's in Laura Henry's acting class right now, and it seems small.
Yeah.
But the reason why that's a great example too is, out there continuing to work her craft.
Exactly.
Even in the midst of having these huge projects that, are doing well.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example of a seemingly healthy ego. And that's Ephraim Sykes. You've heard me talk about Ephraim before. Ephraim Sykes is just remarkable to me. I mean a true... Such a great actor, such a great singer, such a great dancer, and such a good guy. Truly, we're not best friends. We did the show together for a long time, however, so I saw him work, constantly. And I'll tell you a quick story. When I first joined the cast of Ain't Too Proud, they had been doing it for some time, and so we started rehearsals. My character doesn't enter for an hour into the show, so they started from the top and they were reworking. So I was sitting on the sidelines watching these people do amazing things, and day by day getting more and more scared for when I make my little entrance and be like, "Hello, here's a piece of paper that you should sign."
I'm the honky.
Hi there, hi there. So
hey there, fellas.
So we get, and I was watching Ephraim, and he just is remarkable. And then he did My Girl, and I was like, what's going on? And we're getting closer and closer to my first entrance in rehearsal, and these people haven't seen me act, and I have 17 lines in the show or whatever, and I've had been sitting on my ass for a week and a half, and we get to my scene, and I'll tell you what happened. First, they go, "So Shelley Berger, come on in here and meet the temps." And I go in there and say, "Hey there, gentlemen, pleasure to meet you." And the whole room starts applauding for me. Why? Because they're just sort of welcoming me. Maybe they would plan it. I don't know. I remember being like overwhelmed, and I was like,
so
"Wow,
nice. Oh my God.
So nice." Oh no, I mean, they were so kind. They all applaud for me, and Ephraim walks up to me. And because we had this first book, because he's playing David Ruffin, and I'm so intimidated by him. By the way, not just of his talent, of his kindness. You know what, Ephraim? I'll tell you this. Actually, I'm just realizing this now. Day one of rehearsal, when I showed up, they were doing a prayer circle, and I thought I was early, but everyone was there doing a prayer circle, and I was, also a bit intimidated. I hadn't been in a show where we did prayer circles, and Ephraim walks over to me and takes me by the hand and takes me to the circle. This is the lead of the show, one of the leads of the show. Such a good man. So anyway,
that's really great.
Ephraim walks up to me in the scene, and I completely forget my line. I have 17 lines. They applaud, and I go, "Line?" I didn't know my line. And part of it's because I just am so taken with, and let me say why. You said about Liz. It's because he's giving. He's a generous performer. He's present with people. He's appreciative of his fans. He's appreciative of his colleagues. He's easy to work with. He takes notes. He just seems to have a really healthy ego, and it's something that I aspire to even more so, because he's playing at the top of his game, and he's such a good person and doing great work along the way.
That's great. My next person who I want to shout out with, who's a good ego, is Susanna Melanzi, who not many people will probably know listening to this, but Susanna Melanzi is the I forgot what the managing director. No, not the managing director. The God help, she helps raise money for Bedlam.
The development director.
Yes, and runs Bedlam alongside Eric, and Susanna is one of the best actors working in New York City. The hands down.
Is she in the show?
No, she's not in this show. She's one of the best actors. Every time she's in something, she gets like a fucking Lortel nomination or something, whatever. And I have to say, we know Joel, her father.
Yep.
And he's a great guy. And Susanna is fascinating because Susanna, the reason why I had to shout out Susanna is because she's so incredibly talented, amazing, and engaged. She's one of those animal performers that you watch and like you're just leaning forward the whole time she's on stage. Like just animal. She's no ego. Always willing to work on things, always willing to try things. Like, you know, when she gets notes, it's just like, you know, yeah, oh, that's good, you know, blah, blah, blah. Always willing to, like, you know, keep working. The big thing is, but she's also the development director. So, you know, not only is she in these shows, you know, at times, like, doing that, she's also dealing with the donors in the room, making sure they feel comfortable. I mean, you know, most actors are like, I can't, you know, when I need a show, I need to go lock myself in the closet for, you know, 4 days or whatever the fuck. You know, this is all. She's literally carrying a show on her back, on the ground, like sobbing, screaming in the scene. And then it's like, during the break, like with the donors schmoozing.
Yeah.
You know, just like that. And the reason why I had because she's going to do what's best for the company, and she is gonna do what needs to get done, and that's it. But also she takes care of her instrument and she takes care of herself, you know, before the show she's prepping whatever, and it's really her ability to balance those things and to do what needs to get done in running a company while also being an actor. I find impressive. I mean, this is, and the last thing I want to say about this, because I've talked to Joel about this. You know, Susanna doesn't even have a headshot. I say this because Susanna has no desire to, like, she wants to be a mother primarily and to make Bedlam what it is. Yeah. That's her. She's not out here. She doesn't want to have she doesn't want to be on television. She doesn't want to be blah, blah, blah. She wants to raise her kids and she wants to make great art. And she is in a position now to do that. And that's what she's doing, and she's a fascinating. You have to meet her one day. She's incredible.
I'd love to. I'd love to.
Incredible soul and just like really business savvy too. Anyway,
well, the last example of a healthy ego is someone who I think has informed a lot of our work, Mike, and that's Nick Blaemeyer, who I think is going to be on the podcast soon. The amazing Nick Blaemeyer. Yes. But while there's amazing things about Nick that make him, I think, such an example of someone with a healthy ego. And I say healthy ego because I know Nick would speak to this. Nick has plenty of insecurities too, and he's open about them. Right. I want to correct one thing you said. You said Susanna has no ego. That's not ego. You could everyone has an ego. It's what you do with it. And
healthy,
exactly.
Ego, yeah.
And but Nick, though, let me just say there's one core reason why I believe Nick has a healthy ego, and it's because he gives.
Yeah, definitely.
So we have so many people are afraid to give in this industry. Think about it. You go, oh, could I have a recommendation for your agent? Oh, well, I just recommended them, and I don't know. It's kind of a funny. Ugh. Nick is so comfortable in himself, and he's got such a big heart that he actively provides value for so many people in this industry, and it's been such an inspiring act for me to that again I think has informed so much of what artist strategy is because it's what we preach. So Nick is my other person of example of a healthy.
No, every time I talk to him, he's just like the nicest, most grounded dude.
Real.
And he's just like,
he's real.
You know,
I'm
real
excited
dude.
for him to be on. I'm excited for him to be on.
Me too.
So, okay, why don't we start by talking about, because it's easy to go ego, bad egos, bad temperaments, whatever. But why don't we start by talking about the value of having a healthy ego and where it can really help you?
Yes. That's great. Let's do it.
In a very basic sense, and honestly, this is probably one of the things that people struggle with the most, is owning how great people are. Meaning, it is helpful to have a healthy ego, knowing that you have something valuable to offer, that you are unique, that you have something special to provide, and that you're confident about it. That is sexy and it's helpful. And if you don't have that, that's kind of step one in a lot of ways.
Well, let me talk about owning your work. And I mean, look, I was saying this to my God, like my therapist, as well. I go to therapy, women. Please have sex with me. It's not just the Ben and Jerry's, okay? No, but
don't get to know me. Don't date me. Just have sex with me.
No, I'm just joking. Just making it a ha-ha.
So but, using the podcast to like seek women. You're like using it as
that's just the title, the thumbnail, Seeking Women. The ad is like, hey, you may
come watch Gomorrah with me.
Come watch Gomorrah with me, Ben and Jerry's. We could sweat under our tits together.
I'm sure mine are bigger.
Yeah, I'm sure mine are bigger.
Anyway, you were talking to your therapist about
it. I've never I'm still really. It's something has shifted with this show. I don't know what it is, but I still need validation from Eric and shit to tell me it's good. But I've never been more confident in my work before and what I have to offer. And let me say where that came from. Some people just have that. Some people can just go, I'm somebody, as I need a little more. I can't act on faith as much. I can't make the jump like I'm great. Like I need a little proof or I know who I am. And our branding work, which we've been developing over the past, really we've been developing it for a long time. But I would say, at least when I was a client and now I've been engaging with our brand for branding work for 5 years as it's developed, blah, 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 blah. I know exactly who the fuck I am, what the fuck I have to offer. And I understand that there's a lot of people who are not going to like it. And I say this in terms of ego. Because to know who you are and to walk into a room and understand what you have to offer, that means you have to have a sense. There has to be the Freudian sense of ego. You have to have an understanding of yourself as a product and what it is that you do. And that means it's not just like, okay, I'm just another this. I'm just another that. No, you need to know this is who I am. This is what makes me great. That's ego within itself. And so you can't own your work and know who you are without a sense of self-introspection and placing yourself, looking at placing yourself on a bit of a pedestal and going what is this thing here? What is this entity I'm trying to understand? So that's ego.
You would hate probably working with this director I just worked with. I was thinking about this the other day, Mike. The director not once has told me I'm doing a good job. But here's how she's doing it. She leaves me alone. I'm an equal. I have equal say in sort of how I'm shaping things. I make choices. I don't really get any notes, and we have a lot of mutual respect for one another. But it's funny. I'll tell you why I think it helps me. Not to pat myself on the back, but I don't really need that. And I think she knows that. Yeah. It's enough to just let me do my thing, but it's funny because I was thinking about you because she will not say, that was great. That was very good. She won't say it. She'll move on. Okay, so isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's how a lot of directors are, too. Some more than others,
I validate as a director because I do know that, because I also know it's good to be that you're doing great work. That is we do seek that out. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So personally I do that as a director.
Because you don't want to be, the reason why you need because sometimes it's better to get a note. Because even if you don't want a note, it's oh, I'm not disappearing.
Right.
I'm not it's not like a I would rather it's that Elie Wiesel quote or whatever, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's apathy, or whatever, indifference. It's I would rather you hate what I'm doing
have an
than
opinion.
just be okay.
Yeah.
That was fine.
Yes.
And so it's interesting. In terms of also with why ego is healthy is because and you were kind of saying this earlier, but confidence is what people need to see. I mean, insecurity, it's funny. I'm thinking of one person who we know very well, who shall remain nameless, who...
Can you tell me or bleep it, or will I know who it is?
I think you'll know who it is.
Okay.
Who's a very insecure performer. Very insecure performer.
You.
And
I'm just kidding.
We know this. I have a cousin, my cousin's friend who's got a huge dick. I don't know why. And he really doesn't sweat under his tits at all. He's super cool. No, but we know I'll just say his name. But exudes confidence.
Yeah.
Exudes somehow, even though he's very open about it. There's something, I don't know what it is, and I can't describe how somebody could be so insecure, but there's a lot of people like this who can be so insecure but also so confident but exude confidence.
I would argue that we're all insecure. Really, everyone has insecurities. But I think what you're getting at, and this is what's really important, and let's just take an example. When you audition for something, when you walk in the room to audition, and this is coming from, when I used to run our rules, I used to watch hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of auditions a year. And I learned a lot about auditioning for myself, because what was not comfortable was when people would come in and stand behind an imaginary line. Hello, hi, how are you? Hi, oh, okay. Should I put this here? What should I? It's uncomfortable. We want people, they want people who they can trust with their money. I can pay this person to do a good job. They will show up. They will give me what I want. And you know what? The higher you get in this industry, the more true that is. And it's not about cockiness. It's not about coming in thinking your shit doesn't stink. It's about coming in with a sense, exactly what you're saying, a sense of understanding what you bring to the table. And it's either going to be their cup of tea or it's not. But that's, and
it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to be around an insecure person.
Yeah, it is.
It's a little. It is. It's very uncomfortable. When you pitch, that's another good example. I mean,
when you pitch what?
Yes.
Be clear.
When you pitch, if I'm pitching to we'll talk about fundraising in a second. But when I'm pitching to somebody for money, or when I'm trying to pitch a project to a theater or an actor
trying to be seen for a gig.
Trying to be seen for a gig, absolutely. Pitching myself to casting or whomever. It's like, you can't, there's a difference between being like, I'm the best, nobody can do this better, and to be like, listen, I can do something unique. You just use the pitch because that's probably the most day-to-day pitching that we engage with is, hey, I can bring something different to this role. Here's what I can bring. Here's what I can bring that's different. I can bring something unique to this role. Here's what I can bring that's unique. And I would be a great contender. It's not like nobody can play this role but me. I've dreamed about this role forever. I mean, it's not any of that. It's just like, here's what I do that's unique, and here's why I could be a really, really good option for this.
And you did start
simple as that.
You did start to say it, and so I think it's a good one to say. But when you're fundraising, when you are asking people for money, and this is a really common in terms of confidence, whether it's for your self-produced projects, whatever it is. Right. Go listen to our last episode, Wait for No One, because it's a good one on this very thing on self-producing. But when you're asking people for money, they want to see your confidence in what you're going to make. And if you're playing a long game, meaning telling the story of what's to come, seeking funds right now for people to be a part of the future, you have to have a clear sense of what you are going to be able to offer and create. Otherwise,
that's right.
It's not like when I give real money, most of the times I'll give $25 to a project. That's what I give. Most of the times. Let's just be honest. When I give more money, when I give real money, it's because I'm like, oh, I see. Or this person, even if I'm not expecting a financial return, this person is doing good shit, and they're confident, and I'm confident in them subsequently. So confidence.
What's crazy? We were talking to Rashad about this. It's like
my manager.
your manager, who's also a pretty prolific Broadway producer at this point, it's like, you know, and I know from film financing, they literally have to sign a line that says, I will probably not make my money back on this. This is a terrible investment. And it's like literally they have to sign something that says that. And it's like, you know, but what's fascinating, and so most investors know they're not going to make their money back probably, but what they're writing the check for is the person. This person is going to do everything in their power to make the money back. And this person may not make money today, but because they are exuding confidence and because they have a strong sense of like what they're able to do, that I'm investing in this person to maybe make me money in the future.
Absolutely. Okay, and here's another one where confidence plays a role. When you're seeking representation. You know, how many times do you hear people go in to meet with reps and you know, where do you see yourself in this industry? Oh, anywhere. I want to do it all. Commercials, VO, movies, Broadway, anything. Just put me in, coach. Now, look.
This is great.
For some of these lower tier offices who also don't have as much to offer, just being straight up, you know, then whatever. They might be like, okay, I'll just hit my button and see what comes of it. But listen, we were talking about when you're playing a higher game, these people, you know, they want to see what they're working with because they're thinking the same things we're talking about. Are they going to be able to go in the room, show off well, likely get the job? And if you come in there like a meek puppy, lacking confidence, it's not going to probably hit the way you think it's going to hit just because you're so
Let me fucking tell you something. This is really good.
Not the foot.
Because you just made me realize something. You just made me start biting my toenails.
Jesus Christ.
Hey, listen. No, but you made me realize something. You know, my last reps were when I look back, I mean, it was like a fucking nightmare. I mean, they were fucking terrible. Really, the more and more I think about it, I'm like, they were fucking terrible. It's just like, you know.
They were pretty bad.
They were pretty bad. I mean, and they're not a completely bullshit office.
No.
It's like, no, they're
small-minded.
Decent enough.
Small-minded.
Well, that's the thing, and you know, going back to all the warning signs, you know, I did fire them like a couple months ago, and you know, I can actually say that I fired them, I did, and so because I was making them money, and you know, the big warning sign, one of the big warning signs is when we were initially talking. I remember, I was basically like, listen, I'm a fucking star. I was like, you don't understand, like, I am a star. Like, you know, and this is what I want to do in my fucking career. And she was the one who was a little like, okay, like a little like slow your roll a little bit. Like, let's start with square one. And that should have been a warning sign.
Well, it's funny.
That should have been a warning sign. I should have been like, she wasn't like, fuck yeah, all right, bitch, like, let's go. Like, I hear you, like, we have to build up to those things.
Right.
But you know, she was so like, okay, like, you know, she didn't, but I basically went to that meeting and I was like, listen, here's what I do, and I'm a fucking star, dude, and that's just what it is. And she didn't want to play that game with me, and that should have been, but people are so desperate to sign with anybody, myself included at the time, this was like 2 years ago, you know, that I was like, I ignored it. I should have been like, no, you're not going to get on the same page. You're not on the same page.
And they never did. They never did. They never did.
We're on the same page. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because sort of what part of what we're talking about is this next idea of confidence, but also you do need a superiority complex in this business. And again, It does not make you a bad person to know that you're very talented, right?
No.
Because again, people need to trust you, but also it is so competitive in this business. If you don't have that, remember I said this, Mike, remember I told you this. I think this is really fascinating. That guy who said that successful people have 3 traits. They have a superiority complex. They have an innate fear that they're not going to live up to their full potential, and they have impulse control. And that superiority complex idea is very interesting to me. You do have to believe, not that you are more deserving than other people per se, but that you are better. I do believe that you do need to believe that you are better than the competition. And if you go, well, I don't know, who does that benefit for you to sort of lump yourself in the same categories? It won't motivate you to live up to your full potential.
100%, especially when the going gets tough.
Sure.
And, we'll talk about, we have our little outline here. We'll talk about this in a second, but it might be good to actually just quickly jump. I'm going to jump there. All we're doing is getting rejected in this business. And, that's what most of it is. And when you are rejected and when an agent says no, or you don't get the job, or, whatever, you have to look at, there has to be a part of you. There just has to be. And we'll talk about the flip side of this is when it can get too much. But you have to look at and go, their loss. You have to kind of look at them and go like, it's their loss. Because
so true.
You have to, because it's so hard that you do need to believe that, I would say yes, that you are. Because if you don't believe you're better, then nobody will believe you're better.
Well,
and you have to be better.
It's funny.
You have to be better than everybody else.
You know this about me. Mike knows this, that I think I book everything. I literally do. And I
love that.
And I literally have a question whenever I don't book something. Like I literally go, well, who else did they get? I told my agent that. Rashad knows he knows my deep dark secrets. He has it all. He has no filter with
where
Rashad.
The bodies are buried.
Exactly.
Where all your dressers' bodies are buried.
I'm very nice. I'm looking at a pile of cash for my dresser right now. I'm very good to my dressers. That's not nice, but
money solves all problems.
Get me my tea.
Now shut up. Now shut up and here's your.
No. But I told one of my agents that who I'm less open with my agents, of course, than I am with my manager, with Rashad. And I said, I was like, I often will leave an audition, and I'll be like, I have this scheduling conflict on the callback, so just know that when that comes in. I'll talk like that. And my agent is always like, he said that though. I really love that. He goes, I want all my clients to believe they're the only ones for the job. And I'm like, and it's what we're talking about. And I do think that I like what you're saying about it in relation to rejection. Because let's talk about where an overly abundant ego hurts. But to finish up where it helps, in this world of rejection, I do think rather than it going, oh my gosh, I'm bad. It's because I'm a fraud. They see it. No, it's their loss.
Well, let me just, I do want to, because this to me is the most important thing about ego. This is the most important thing about ego is you're not reactionary. Is in spite of everything telling you to stop, to not keep going, right? That's what this business is. No money, fucking rejection, fucking, nobody wants to eat Ben and Jerry's with you late at night. Your other friends have, are buying houses who are not in this business or whatever. You are not taking, the biggest benefit of ego is there has to be a part of you that is a little delusional. Who said this? Somebody said this about actors. You have to be a little delusional. You have to be a little bit like, that's all bullshit out there. What's going on out there is kind of bullshit. And we will talk about the flip side of this, but there has to be a part of you that is not going to be reactionary.
Right.
To what the outside world is saying. You have to have that inside of you. And that takes ego to say, fuck you.
Well, Michaela Cole took I May Destroy You, We May Destroy You, whatever that full name was, to Netflix first. And Netflix wanted to make those changes to whatever those changes were to that show. And she said no. And then HBO said, we'll take it just as is. But listen, Michaela Cole was a workaday actor herself, coming up in the... And when Netflix says, yeah, we'll take your show, and you go, no, I won't compromise on that because I understand the value of it. That is sexy.
And that's this. If people can't see what I'm doing in the audio, it's like you have to kind of throw the middle finger up at the world and say, you don't get it. And then because then what drives you and that's all entrepreneurs talk about this a lot. You don't get it. I'm going to show you.
Exactly.
I'm going to show you how wrong you are.
Exactly.
You are wrong, and I'm going to show you you're wrong by making my own opportunities, by making myself even more undeniable so that you will see.
Yes.
That's all. That's ego, and you need that. Unless you're, look, if you have the privilege of like graduating from school and, you know, whatever, booking a ton of shit, and you can be like, oh, you know, blah, blah, blah. If you have the privilege of that much insecurity and that much, like, that's a privilege. For most of us out here who are fighting to live, fighting every day to make it happen, you got to be throwing up your middle finger at the world a little bit.
I totally agree with that. Well, you said, you know, actors need to be delusional. I think the same thing is true for entrepreneurs. When you're starting any business, you have to have a vision, and you have to believe that it's going to come to life. And without that, per your point, you're easily swayed. Let's talk, though, about now where an overly abundant ego, when you have too much of a sense of self-importance, how that hurts you. And let's keep going with rejection here.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the easiest one, which is, you know, the easiest, meaning what happens the most. We audition, we don't get the job. Nonstop, we don't get the job. And essentially where our ego hurts us is when we take it too personally. When we let it, kind of like what you're saying, let it be a reflection on our potential lack. And then sometimes and I'll give you an example right now. There is a show that I went through several rounds of auditions for. And I didn't get it, but the person who got it is great. He's really good. And honestly, I was like, work.
Do you really believe that? Do you really believe that?
Of course.
The initial person.
Exactly.
Yes,
no, this is what I'm saying. This person is really talented, and look, like I my ego isn't so inflated that I can't see good work. I mean, I if someone's great, I'm here for it. In fact, I actually kind of take it as a compliment in some weird way. But there's another person who is stepping into this same project for a bit, and I did not get the call. And I'll tell you the story that I've told myself, and here's where I think I'm messing up a little bit with how my own ego's getting in the way. The story that I'm telling myself as part of it is that they didn't want to offend me by asking me to step in as the second because was so close to getting it myself. But it really, it makes me angry. I get angry that this other person, you know, has stepped into this part. And here's where that doesn't help me, Mike. I can't actually reflect on that. Instead of going, well, why?
Right.
Why?
Right. Well, I remember I had a decent relationship with when I first got to the city. I had a great relationship with the director. And work was in a play she did, blah, blah, blah. And then I auditioned for another play she did, and I didn't get the part. And I got mad at her. I was angry. And that's an example of that's completely irrational. It's just like, it's not, you know, to get angry at other people for not validating you.
Yes.
That's fucked up. Like, that is you shouldn't, like, because first off, that's not a, you know, that's using other people. You know what I mean? In a lot of ways, is like ways to validate yourself. That's not right. And so, yeah, like, you know, that, and, you know, the other thing is, I want to say this about the pitching, because, you know, whether it's to reps, to casting, whomever, I don't want to put myself in a weak position. That's a lot of the reason why, and I still get this when I pitch myself to casting, but it's like, okay, what the fuck else am I supposed to do? Wait for the magic to come? It's like, when I pitch myself to casting, it does ding my ego a little bit sometimes. Yeah,
okay, let's talk about this, because I don't get it. I want you to break this down for me, because you have had this opinion and essentially, sorry to cut you off, but I want you to talk about it.
I don't think it's wrong. I don't think it's right. I'm just saying that.
But I want to understand it. Let's give them context. Self-pitching specifically to casting for projects.
Let's say, yeah. So, and you know, I would say out of the what? Let's say to casting and directors. I would say 1 out of every 4 pitches I do leads to an audition.
Yeah.
1 out of every 4.
Same.
So, that's mostly rejection, right? So whether I'm pitching to casting or I'm pitching to a director or producer, what artistic director, whatever, 1 out of every 4, okay? Sending that email is always very vulnerable because I shouldn't have to do because I'm afraid it makes me look weak. It makes me look weak to go to that, even no matter how much I would be great for that part, and I believe I would be great for the part and should be seen for the part. By me going like, hey, can you now? What other fucking options?
Well,
do I have?
that's
no
my
other
question.
Options. Well, no, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that you don't have any. I'm not saying that doesn't ding your ego though, to go. And potentially, and then what dings your ego is when 3 out of 4 times you're going to hear no. You're going to hear no,
yeah.
And so it's...
And the same,
I think that's a pretty good...
And the same is true for representation, right? Because, but not to be tangential, we can cut this if you want. But there's people out there who continue to say that, seeking representation, don't do referrals, just do blind submissions. I was on with this manager yesterday who had reached out to us. And now I'm asking them, how do you get clients? She goes, referral only. Just to say, it's always fascinating.
Why would I cut that? That's
because it's random thought. But
it's not random. No,
I saw a post by someone who I won't say who it is, but because we don't need to go there.
We know who it is.
But
if you're a loser actor who follows all these business coaching accounts,
anyway, he's like, no, here's why referrals are bad. Bullshit. Referral. It's only referrals. Anyway, but this is a great example. When actors go, okay, their friend Susie, will you put in a good word with your reps? Yes, I'll pass along your materials. Then we don't hear anything back, or the reps say, yes, we're not interested at this time. What happens is, all the time with actors is they go, oh, okay, I tried. What do you mean you tried? You done? You're done because you got rejected? That's an overly abundant ego.
One time.
Exactly.
No one time.
They're lost.
How many times when you first signed with your first reps in the city, they said no to you how many times?
3 times.
They said no to you 3 times. But you're like, oh, I don't want to put myself in that position again. It's like, who the fuck cares? Who the fuck cares? And it's like,
ego
listen,
gets in the way there.
And I guess that's ego too, but it's like, pitching to casting and putting myself in that position or pitching for a job, it's like, first off, what you're right. The reason why I do it is because there's no other that's the option, right? That's the only option I have, right? Even when you have reps, that's your only option. What are you going to do? You're going to wait for, somebody who just does this all day to fucking, make something happen for you.
Yeah.
It's like, you have to fucking do it, but listen, you have to put yourself out there in this business, and you're going to have to put yourself in a vulnerable position sometimes, or a position to hear no. And if you are not willing to put yourself in a position to hear no because, your sense of ego is so fragile or something, then, that's problematic. It's just, who cares?
Well, you're the only one who gets hurt by that in the long run.
You're the only one who gets hurt.
If you let that rejection, that seemingly no, sort of deter you, they're not getting hurt by it, even though, remember, it's their loss. Your inaction, your inability to move forward, to stop doing what you need to make your career happen, or as I like to say, pay your phone bill, that's on you. I want to talk about this next one because this one is a bit more personal to me in terms of where my overly abundant ego hurts me. And that is ultimately how in a general sense, actors are treated. Obviously, I have a real issue with this because, or artist strategy wouldn't exist. But I do believe that actors are gaslit, disempowered constantly. And I talk more obviously explicitly about it as much as I possibly can. But that comes into other forms of microaggression in terms of how we're treated. You're pulling together an event, a gala, and you have to have singers. You're going to do a few musical numbers. Who gets paid? The musicians, not the actors, right? Actors are often not paid for gigs. We're often sort of used as pawns. We're not communicated with effectively. But that's how I feel, even though I think there's truth to that. But here's where my overly abundant ego hurts me. I speak out. B, I do feel a certain responsibility to speak out on behalf of other actors a lot of times when I see it happening. Not my place, not helpful for me. Because then I can look difficult if I express what I need and create boundaries, because I am an equal collaborator either in the space. It can even, you know what, Mike? It can be sometimes in processes. I do not believe in a hierarchy where it's like I'm just to be moved around the stage. I have a thought. Just a question. Why am I going to do that? Or what if we did? That's how. But sometimes, Mike, it's funny. Even as I talk it out, I don't think there's anything wrong with me doing any of those things. But in this industry where actors are, beaten to submission into tiny corners, when you're developmental, especially, that can be perceived as difficult. Or
I partially disagree. Well, here's where I think the ego hurts. The ego hurts in two respects. There are some actors who are so. Listen, I think maybe sometimes a little too much, but on the whole, duck off a water's back. And there are actors that we've worked with who if excuse me, why wasn't my water bottle in the dress? Yes, maybe the water bottle should have been there. But it's like, it's funny. I was doing the show and a major prop was missing. And there's some context behind this, but it was not good. And, part of me wanted to and it was kind of a build up to this. There was things building up to this. And part of me wanted to have my freak out because this person, and I was like, you know what? Duck off who the fuck cares? Why am I going to? Yeah, so the water bottle wasn't in the room. Yeah, so maybe this person, where it comes a lot of times too is when actors, where I do disagree, is like when you're in an environment where you have to move quickly, and the director is not communicating to the actors exactly what they need. Like you have to kind of take it on yourself, and you'll have some actors who are like, excuse me. Like who want to? It's a way of taking back control. If you can figure it out yourself, then figure it out yourself.
Absolutely.
That's my opinion.
No.
But there's a lot of actors out there who because yes, they should be I'm not saying that they're wrong, but it's like, are you really gonna let me give you a quick.
I'm going to give you a real time example from 4 days ago. There was an actor who was very sick and had to step out of the show. They were an ensemble member. Not a big deal. The ASM came to my room, 5 minutes before curtain and said, just so you know, this person is not going to be in the show, so you're going to have a sub in one of my songs and for one of the scenes. And I was like, okay. And I said, this needed to be, I said it clearly. And this is an example though, where I see the dichotomy, because I said this needed to be a roundup conversation. We needed to talk about the changes, because sure enough, second scene, exactly what I said. I'm in the middle of it. This person, I was not there. I find myself going to one of the other ensemble members who's going to step in. We hadn't problem solved it. Wasn't communicated with effectively. And again, a lot of times it's because, in my opinion, actors are sort of pushed to the side. But again, I shouldn't defend, because this is my Achilles heel. This exact thing. We weren't paid. I won't even want to say the project was. There was a project where we weren't paid properly for a residual merch item. And I dug my heels in. And I honestly probably spoke out too much, as opposed to the other actors who were like, thank you for my crumbs. But where it ultimately hurts me is, it's like you're saying, water off a duck's back. In the grand scheme of things, does that help me? And I would argue that that's where my overly abundant ego sometimes does not help me. Honestly, I can own that. Well,
I want to, because there's another thing about this, but I want to say this, because I see it most often where it's like, when it's especially when it's environments where it's like we have to move quickly or whatever, and the actors are sort of left to their own devices. Yeah. And you'll have the actors who are like, why aren't you dealing with me and what but I'm saying this because it's about winning a little victory. It's like, it's about winning a little victory for themselves so that they don't feel, and it's like, because they're telling us, again, they're placing themselves in the center of the story. Yeah. That it's all about, as opposed to seeing the big picture, as both of us who are produce, and why I think it's okay when you do it, and I understand, is because listen, you are somebody who walks your talk. You have produced. You have 90% of actors haven't done fucking anything. They haven't produced anything. They haven't tried to build anything themselves, so they can sit on the sidelines and critique. When, the water bottle wasn't in the dressing room or whatever the fuck, like you said it was going to be, because they've never built anything in their fucking lives. So they can sit, you and I have at least built shit. And we understand that that there's oversight, or sometimes you do have to put these people to the side and deal with the more important things. But the reason why so many actors have big reactions is because they place themselves, it's all about me and about how they're hurting me or ignoring me. The other reason why I think it's problematic is because when you have that, you're not looking at your side of the street. When there's too much about how they're treating me, well, maybe you're not valuable enough. I know that's kind of fucked up, but this is the flip side of it. Maybe you're not valuable enough. Yeah. How do you make yourself more valuable? If I don't get, somebody asked me to do a short recently, somebody who I really respect, and they wanted me to basically, they weren't going to pay me, and it was for like 5 lines and something. And I was offended by it. And it's like, because not only are you not going to pay me, but it's not even like you're not even coming to me with something good. And it's like, I was like, that's not, and yes, although I think that was a mistake on her part, whose fault is that? That's my fault.
Right.
That's my fault.
Right.
What that proves to me, and what I need to take in, is that I am not a valuable enough asset.
Exactly.
Well, how do I avoid that happening? If I don't like the way I'm treated at a concert or a gala, and I'm kind of, that must mean that they aren't in fear enough of me. Well, how do I make them, because I'm not big enough for them.
Right, and if I say the only thing I'll counter with the word fear is respect, or
respect. That's good.
Because we don't want we don't want people to be afraid. I don't want people to be afraid.
No,
per
just
se.
respect you and treat you like you're a fucking star.
Yeah,
and that starts and ends with you. And
now
what you're doing for
that
yourself.
I very much agree with. Which, for what it's worth, which is part of why I try to communicate my expectations, because I have very high expectations for myself. We've got this young people on our spots, right? And there's this one joke I have, and this person is always shaky on my spot, and it annoys me. And I've given the note multiple times, because I'm like, look, I'm out here giving 110. I'm trying to craft this joke as best I can, and if you kill the vibe with your shaky hands, that's a problem. And I'm not trying to be a dick about it, but we gotta work collectively to make that happen. And I don't think it's a problem, because it's not coming from a place of how dare you do that to me. It's no. I'm giving it to you. I'm walking the talk, so to speak. So I need us all to step up and be 100%. But you know what? I want to say this. You know this about me, Mike. I'm big on intention. I don't even need perfection, as long as we are trying our best. As long as we're trying our best. Let's get to this big one that we already brought up, though, that's going to be really relatable for folks when it comes to ego, and this is this idea of getting notes. Getting notes.
Yeah.
From anybody. Especially other actors, but from anybody.
Well, it's funny. I read I had a shift on, especially, look, these young fucking people, these young fucking people, these Gen Z motherfuckers, because they're like, whatever, they believe in like an egalitarian universe where we're all collaborating. It's like, the person who has no fucking, I've worked on a couple projects with these people, and these Gen Zers feel like they have a voice in the room. They feel like they, and this is as you work,
they might have a healthy ego.
Well, it's like somebody who should, normally, I would argue, should probably keep their mouth shut about something, and watch and learn from others. They're much more outspoken about their opinions and what they think and blah 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 blah. I have mixed feelings about that. I don't, my opinion is like and most of the time it's garbage. It's not good, but like they just need to be seen and heard in the room, whatever the fuck. But why am I saying this about the notes? It's because I was doing a project. I was doing a 29-hour developmental reading, and there was a lot of Gen Z people involved. And I was talking, it was my first experience, this is before the pandemic, and I was talking to the director about a scene, and one of the younger people started like chiming in with what they thought, like it was a conversation with everybody, what they thought was going on in the scene for me. And it was very like, and I was literally like appalled. I was about to fucking flip my lid. And it's fun. And then I read something but then I remembered something I read from The Invisible Actor, Yoshio Ito, which I think is a great book. He says, I take feedback from everybody. I'll take feedback from the janitor. He's like, all the feedback in the world. Why not? If you had a healthy sized ego, you could take doesn't mean you have to.
Because why are we intimidated? Because why are we intimidated
Exactly.
by the 19-year-old?
Give it all to me. Give it all to me, and I'll take the janitor's idea. And it might, because if I'm letting myself go and trying to do what's best for the project, and not about me, then the janitor, give me the fucking note. The lighting, the guy holding the spot, give me the note.
I agree.
Or the other actor in the scene. It's like, what? Who does it hurt?
Well,
right?
but let's talk about why we feel threatened by that. And I just have to say, side note, I hear you on this next generation. This is what happens with every generation, by the way. This is what it means to get old. But this next generation, they are confident. I forget his name. He went to School of the Arts, actually. The guy he's in Beautiful Noise now. DeAndre 7. I forget his name. Yeah.
You say great things about him.
Oh my God. Well, but I'll tell you what. He had just graduated when we did that musical, that Anna Devere Smith musical, and it was just a workshop. But I was so impressed with his confidence and his ease and his ability to communicate, to not be afraid to communicate. And honestly, I argue that for us, even millennials and above, we get a bit intimidated by that sense of freedom and confidence, because I would argue that maybe that generation does maybe already have a healthier ego, a better sense of self potentially, just as a counter. But
maybe.
But in terms of this idea of notes, what you're saying, why do we feel so threatened by Gen Zers, for example, saying, well, you know what my opinion is? What comes up for you?
Or other actors or
other actors. What's the fear? What's the fear?
Somebody. Well, I'll use yesterday, because that was a good example. And this, by the way, the dude who said this is not a Gen Zer. He's not, but quite the opposite. Not a Gen Zer. So it's not just, why it bothers me is the same reason why ultimately sometimes when I get, when I get negative notes from a director, negative, or here's what I think we should work on notes. And this is the ultimate harm of ego. It's what you said about the spotlight guy. And this is my greatest fear sometimes. Letting complacency win over excellence, right? Ego a lot of times can mean complacency. Don't tell me, I don't need to know. Just tell me it's good. Even if it's horrible, tell me it's good. And that's what's harmful about that, obviously, is that that's about me and my validation, and not about making the best possible show, movie, whatever it is we can make. But ultimately, what I want to hear at the end of the day, here's what I want to hear at the end of the day. You're excellent. You're perfect. You're doing nothing wrong. That's all I want to hear. All the time.
Because you don't want to work, because you don't want to do more work, or why?
No, I do want to do. It's not about the doing more work. It's because I have that's a great question. I don't know. It's because I have a fragile sense of my self-esteem. It must be that.
Well, here,
but I ultimately what I want to hear is I'm great. And so when I get notes, it's not like, I have to do more work. I work my ass off on everything. So it's not about work. It's about, but why it hurts me is because you settle. You settle as opposed to constantly saying it could be better. I could be better. So tell me everything. I'll take it all. The last thing I want to hear on press night is what I have to work on. That's the last thing I want to hear. I just want to hear I'm great. And, that's fucked up. That's not right. But, I'm just being honest.
Two things. One's a thought, and then one's a brief story about this. One, the thought is, I argue that that notes in general butt up against our imposter syndrome. I think notes.
Yes, that's good.
Notes partially challenge our sense of confidence, because if I really am as great as I say I am, and I get feedback, does that mean I'm not as
That's
great
right.
as I am?
That's right. That's exactly, because that's exactly it. That's it.
And it's scary. It's a scary feeling.
When you imagine Robert De Niro and Scorsese, it's like, for some reason, it's like, oh, Robert De Niro's not getting notes from Scorsese. It's like, of course is Leo getting notes? Are the truly great, because we have this opinion that the truly phenomenal great, you're so right, it is. It's like, oh, I must not be one of those people. If I'm getting notes, if I'm not perfect right away, if I can't deliver it 100% of the time, 100 all the time, then I must not be one of those people.
I bet you Martin Scorsese is giving Leonardo DiCaprio notes. Absolutely.
100. Of course. And of course he is.
And it's funny because, when I work, sometimes because I have a strong personality.
Wow.
A dominant personality. And when I get, sometimes I'll work with directors who I can feel are afraid to give me notes. And it's not helpful for me because I'm very open. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I am very open to. I need to be directed. I can come with strong ideas, but I need to be guided. I can think of performances right now that I've given that were just manic and unfocused because I didn't get direction, and it was because the directors didn't even feel comfortable giving me notes, and that I don't like that. I'll tell you what was the quick story I was going to tell you. Oh, it's when I was directing, and it relates to this. You know this about me, Mike. You know that I am always sort of like, okay, how can we make this better? How can we make this better? And when I was directing, there was a play I was directing, and it was a very, very challenging play. Four-hander. The story was about a guy whose wife was raped and killed, and it's a horrific journey that he goes on, and he basically carries it on his shoulders. And I am personally a believer for myself as an actor, but as a director, that it's not over till it's over, that there's more work to be done all the way to the very end. And
and I love that, and that's how it should be.
And I remember after a matinee one day, we had a 2-show day. I think we must have been in previews because I was there giving notes. I pulled the cast together, and I am not great, and probably why I'm okay with this. I'm not always great at being like, here are all the wonderful things. I go straight in, to the work that needs to get done. I've got 25 minutes, so here's what I need you to look at for, and I'll go. He flipped out. I remember he was throwing shit, just screaming at me. And I'm saying it though because
and that was Leonardo DiCaprio.
But I'm also saying it though because I think I'm saying this because there's another side to it as well, which is the balancing of me also seeing him where he's at, having just completed the show, doing this and going like, wait a second, maybe he doesn't need 4 pages of notes because he has to do this again in 3 hours. And how can he take in information and make the changes he needs to? And he had been. Well, and I will say he's a bit problematic in terms of like throughout the process, he was a bit resistant. He had voice problems.
Well, it sounds like to the two ends of that is it sounds like he has a big ego because per your point, I'm the same way. It's fascinating. I've gotten 1,000 million times better at it. By the way, as I like talk myself down like I'm like fucking terrible with it. It's just like, but it's not about me doing a good job. Who the fuck cares about me doing a good job? Who cares? That's who cares. It's about when we do these things, are we in service of the story and are we serving? And this applies to, and I'm going to jump here, to business. It's not about you get rejected. It's what we were talking about earlier. I think where unhealthy ego really hurts is you don't, the counter of flipping off everybody saying you don't get it is not taking in what this is capitalism, baby. Whether you like it or not, you communist fucking swine, socialist pigs out there, we live in America.
Jesus Christ.
And so, the problem is that, listen, the market needs to validate you. And if you are shutting off the market and you are saying, no, I don't care what you think, you're wrong.
Absolutely.
Then you are not going to be better. Then frankly, you're shorting yourself. You're potentially shorting yourself, improvement, taking yourself to, let me give you a good example because it relates. We talked about last episode. We talked about monetizing your, I should just be able to make art. Why do I have to think about money? Listen, when you think about monetizing projects, it makes them better every single time. If you ask yourself how this project is going to make money, in my opinion and experience, you know what starts to happen? The project starts to elevate.
Absolutely. Because you start to think about other people. And what they're
other people.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And so, that's a perfect example of if your ego's so big that you can't look at what the market wants and validates.
Right.
And I'm not saying, again, it's not about, to go back earlier, not trying to always do that, but at least take it in and consider.
I think that's right.
And then make a choice.
Make a choice. But
you have to take it in.
The word that's coming up for me there that I think you're bringing up is balance. Like, it's a balance because just like we're talking about Michaela Cole as an example, definitely stick to your guns, own what you have. But per your point, how does that play against, what the market's looking for, and how can that help you? The last one, the last part of where an overly abundant ego hurts is a bit personal for me. I've been thinking a lot about this. And it kind of relates to what you just said. And that's not taking responsibility for as actively making sure we are improving our work every day. I mean, what good business doesn't reflect back on their product to go, is this competitive? And I'm going to give you a real example. Musical theater was not the primary backbone of my career, but it has become a big part of my career. I am competitive in musical theater, I think, in large part because I sing well, but also because I am a dominant actor first, and I know that I have a unique market share there. But here's where I don't have a unique market share, and that's in my ability to dance. I don't dance very well. I am a very physical actor. I'm a fine mover.
Do some for us now. Let's see. Demonstrate. Yeah, I see it. You
see the talent, or you see the lack thereof.
The lack thereof.
But here's where my ego is fucking me in the ass. You smile, not to be so crude about it, but why won't I go to dance class? Why won't I? Because I'm scared. And why am I scared? What am I scared of? This is my ego getting in the way. Who the hell cares? We have one life to live. I can go to Broadway Jazz Beginner at Broadway Dance Center and do my little box step or whatever the frick they're going to have me do. And because you know what the problem is, Mike? It's not even that I can't move. It's that when I get into dance calls and they're all there and everyone's kicking and I'm stressed. And this is a very micro example of where I think for a lot of people, I don't take responsibility as often as we can because fear, which is based in ego, obviously, fear of looking less than in a class situation basically hurts me.
Well, the flip side of this, I just have to say, is like people who all they do is take fucking class. And like, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's like, so there is the flip side of that. But I think it is a solid 50% of people who are obsessed with improving their craft, which is great, but that's all they focus on. And you and I both know that that's one piece of the puzzle. But then there's the flip side, which I feel like you and I sometimes fall into. I am, and I know you are too. I am always thinking about craft and how I can get better. I am always thinking about that, but not nearly if I'm truthful 1,000%, I'm at a 3 in terms of what I should be thinking about that. I think about it more than most people, but I think I'm about a 3.
My problem is I think about it, but as you know, I believe thinking kills ideas. I can think about it all I want. My problem is in action.
Actively going. And let me say this. The reason why it hurts to do that, to actively work on your craft, is because we're kind of, listen, you and I both went to one of the best from, at least if you believe, Deadline, The Hollywood Reporter, or whatever, we went to one of the best acting schools in the world, and, the last thing I need to worry about is if I'm good. That should be a given. And when I sign up for a class or I am actively trying to improve on myself, I'm admitting to myself that there's still stuff to work on with my craft. I have so many other things I have to think about in terms of community cultivation, marketing, blah, 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 blah. It seems like that should be a given. And when I sign up for a class or I want to train, build a training regimen for myself, whatever, it's me admitting to myself that no, that's not where that entirely needs to be. And that dings at your self-confidence. However,
imposter syndrome.
This is so competitive. Yeah, exactly. And this is so competitive that I need to be always striving to be the best I can possibly be. Otherwise, it's like go sit on the sidelines. It's like if you're not striving to be the best you can be, and that requires a healthy sense of ego because you have to look objectively at yourself as well, then why are you bothering? It's just too hard.
This is a great example, somewhat tangential thought, but this is where, the idea of why we have to consider many elements all at once comes into play. No, you can't take class for 3 months and then do 3 months of figuring out secondary income and then 3 months of figuring out your marketing. These pieces have to work conjointly, and craft, more importantly, to what we're talking about, is the baseline of what we're primarily offering. If I say, put me in a Broadway musical, then I need to understand that form and make sure that I am playing at the best of my ability at all times. Otherwise, it's not that I'm hurting anybody else. They'll go with the other guy who they already went with the other day. You know what I mean? And it only hurts me. Okay.
I do think this is a good place to end on, which is how do we, just in a couple summation here, what are your thoughts about how does one begin to develop a right-sized ego? I know we're not therapists, but I can start this off.
Okay.
Because it's what you said, which is the balance. And so, it's about getting outside of yourself. Ultimately, I think having a right-sized ego is all about getting outside of yourself. And here's what I mean. It's like my therapist always says, if I'm like I'm the best, I'm celebrating a big win or something, call somebody else and ask how they're doing. If I'm like I'm the biggest piece of shit in the world and I didn't do blah blah blah, call somebody and ask how they're doing. And I think that investing in other people is probably the best way to get rid of right-sized ego on both ends. Because here's what starts to happen. The whole reason why I have never been more confident in myself as an actor and as a viable player in this business is because I finally got outside of my story and I started to look outside and be like, oh, what's going on in the business? What's going on in business? How does business work? How does the world work? And it was very humbling to get outside of myself and actually go, oh, this isn't about me and how great I am. This is about I have something I want other people to buy.
Yeah.
And so, by looking at that, I have developed a stronger sense of confidence and a better self-image. Just want to be very clear, but that had to come from a humbling and getting outside of myself first. So I think that if you have a huge ego, you think you're the biggest piece of shit in the world, or you think you're the best thing in the world, finding ways to get outside of your story in here and start to think about what's out there in the world. How can I invest in other people? What can I learn from the outside, I think is probably the best way to do it. That's my thought.
No, I love that. And I'll piggyback off that and give some tangible examples as well. I love that. I think constantly seeking feedback and self-reflection, on how we are affecting other people, treating others how we would like to be treated. I'm thinking about that in relation to what I was, also talking about. You also kind of mentioned this, but I'll say what other people. I think we should have therapists in this business in particular. I think that's helpful. I think journaling is an action to sort of continue to have these conversations with ourselves. I'll also say this. I think coming back to our why. We'll probably talk about this. We did in our first episode a bit, the actor's mindset, about understanding your why. But I bring it up in relation to this because why am I doing this? Because even if that why has to do with ourselves, I think it could provide some reflection on where our ego stands in all of it. And is it helping what we're trying to do and our values and what we're working towards in terms of vision, or is it not? Listen, I think I'm glad we did this episode because I think that it's as much a part of growing a successful creative career as is any other element. And I think we, once again, pat, healthy egos have made our case as to why. Don't you, Michaela?
I think we did a good job.
Good us.
I think we did.
Good us.
I think we did.
Good us. Okay, next week I'll see you back in New York.
Oh, yeah, fuck yeah. Can't wait to see you in person.
Well, folks, this has been Creative Risk, where we talk about art, entrepreneurialism, and everything in between. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share and subscribe, and also, rate and review it. That is helpful for us.
Yes.
People look at us to go, who are these kooky folks?
Yeah, we're getting a lot of texts. We're getting a lot of texts and emails, people loving the podcast. That's great.
Yep.
But please say it where it matters, which is in the public. Okay? Rate us and review us.
Bye.